Great. Thank you all for your testimony here today. We have a busy morning in the Senate, and so many of our colleagues may submit questions for the record, may join us, many of them watching from their offices. Let me start with you, Ambassador Jacobson. Obviously, this is a very difficult assignment. I talked about my distaste for the drawdown of diplomatic presence in Baghdad at the end of the Trump administration. I think it's important that we have a robust diplomatic and economic engagement with our Iraqi partners. But I do worry about the middling number of American military forces in the region. We've got about 2,500 troops, about 6,000 contractors. Our presence is really not enough to shift the balance of power, but what it is too often is an easy, sometimes unprotected target for anti-American militias. There's an argument to be made that our presence on balance is starting to become more of a liability than a net benefit. I'm talking about our military presence. David Schenker, who was the previous administration's Assistant Secretary of State for the region, who I have a lot of respect for, recently argued that it's time for the United States to start thinking about how to best downsize the U.S. military footprint in Iraq. Outside of the Kurdistan contingent, there is less and less utility in the ongoing U.S. military deployment. I'm not going to ask you to take a position on our force numbers, but as you're preparing for this assignment, what is your understanding of the comparable efficacy between our diplomatic presence and our military presence? And can you speak at all about how our military contingent there sometimes complicates relations with the Iraqi government? For instance, when we have to take retaliatory strikes against the militias inside Iraq as a means to protect our military contingent inside Iraq.
Thank you for the question, Senator. As you know from the time we spent together in Kosovo, I have always approached our engagement as the United States as a three-legged stool. We have to have diplomacy, we have to have development, and we have to have our defense structures together. As you know, last year, the U.S. and Iraq announced a higher military coordinating commission, which is looking at how our military component of Operation Inherent Resolve eventually evolves into a bilateral security arrangement, and that is informed by a series of important factors, including operational and environmental concerns, the threat that's continued to be posed by ISIS, and the capabilities of the Iraqi security forces. So I think this engagement remains very important. With regards to the diplomatic platform, as you know, we have several of our agencies present in Iraq, and if confirmed, I would want to play the appropriate role of an ambassador in a whole-of-government approach, which gets to our national interests in the region. And I would look at security, economic development, democratic development, and the relationship with Iraq-Kurdistan region as all parts of a broad 360-degree relationship, which is not only important for Iraq's advancement, but also stands as a way to bolster the Iraqi government and the Iraqi people against the Iranian influence.
Yeah, obviously don't expect for you to have an opinion today, but look forward to consulting with you once you have boots on the ground to really understand what the comparable efficacy is of a relatively small military deployment there, which is too often ends up being sitting ducks for the folks who are trying to provoke our forces and interests in the region. Mr. Iturrege, I wanted to talk to you about gun violence in the Caribbean. It's amongst the highest in the world. Customs data indicates that it's U.S. weapons that are almost always the ones being recovered in crime scenes in the Dominican Republic. 97% of firearms recovered in the DR and submitted to the ATF for tracing were manufactured or imported from the United States. There's a Caribbean firearms roadmap that's been developed to try to cut down on gun trafficking, largely coming from the United States into the region. Obviously, this matters a lot because of the instability in Haiti today. Can you just say a word about what you understand about this roadmap and what kind of contributions our embassy and an ambassador on the ground can make to trying to interrupt the flow of weapons into the region and specifically into the DR, many of which end up moving very quickly into the conflict in Haiti?
Thank you, Senator. Indeed, it is a very serious problem. From what I read, I haven't had the opportunity to be fully briefed, but I know that we have a robust presence in Embassy Santo Domingo of U.S. law enforcement agencies, and they are working very closely with the Dominican government in tackling this challenge. The administration, as you know, also has, with your support, in motion the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, and I understand that those efforts are being ramped up, and we are not only coordinating with Dominican authorities, but with other governments in the Caribbean Basin. Thank you.
I've got more questions. I'll save them for a second round, and I'll turn it over now to Senator Young.